So you can find the links to the photos I use in this course in the course photo links guide that you can find at the beginning of the course. But you can use any photography you want. You could talk about any topic with your project that you work alongside me with this. Doesn't have to be the same photos. But I have our main photo that we want to feature for our article, so let's go ahead and pop that in. I am just going to drag that photo right into this container box, and it's going to automatically populate. And I'm clicking on it. I'm going to right click, and I want to do some fitting. So I'm going down to fitting, and I'm going to fill frame proportionately. It's going to go ahead and fill it proportionally out for us and do a lot of the hard work for us. Let's do the other two photos. We have this watch that we're just going to drag right here into this upper frame. Of course, it dragged it in kind of a weird way, but that's okay because we can select the photo, right click, fitting. We're going to try something differently. This is something that's new in the last couple years, content aware fit. So we know about the content aware fill tool in Photoshop that allows us to, it kind of is an algorithm that finds subjects and helps you cut them out and fill it in. This is kind of something similar where we do content aware fit, and there's an algorithm that runs where it tries to find the focal point in the photo and helps to kind of frame it for you. So it's kind of nice. You can do what we did before, or we could try this content aware fit, and it kind of uses that algorithm to center align what it thinks is the main focal point of the photo. So let's try that one more time. We have this photo of a woman with a necklace. We can right click, go to fitting. Of course, there's shortcuts. If you do the same action over and over, you can memorize these shortcuts. We're going to go to content aware fit, and it's going to find that subject matter for me. So let's say it did that, but I wasn't very happy with how it was doing. We can select our photo just once using the move tool or the selection tool, and it's going to have that blue box again, and we can move the entire frame around. So this is how you move the frame of the photo. You can make the frame bigger by expanding that option. But let's say we don't want to just make the frame bigger. We want to make the photo bigger. So let's go ahead and go back to where we were. We're going to hold down Command Shift, and now we're going to be able to scale it bigger. So we can make that whole thing bigger. If we were to not press Command Shift and we were to scale this, it doesn't scale the photo. It just makes the container a little bit bigger. So holding down Command Shift and expanding will make the photo a little bit bigger. If I were to double click the photo, you'll see an orange border now. Now I can change the way it's cropped into the photo frame. So I'm going to hold down the Shift button so it scales dimensionally, and I can bring more focus in on a particular object, or I'd like to bring in that bracelet a little more so you can kind of change the cropping. Just like that. So really it's a little complicated, but you have a couple different sizing options. You can click once, you get the blue box. You can change the photo frame, or do Command Shift and scale the whole thing bigger, or you can double click and scale, not change the frame, but change the photo within the frame. So it takes a little getting used to because other programs like Photoshop and Illustrator don't really behave that way all the time. I know Photoshop does have a container tool as well, so our rectangle frame tool. So we also want to change maybe the cropping of the woman as well. We want to bring in what is really the most important thing about this article is the accessories. So we want to kind of zoom in more on the accessories, a little bit less on her herself, but on the gold accessories. So we're just going to double click, and then we're just going to kind of bring in her a little bit so we get a little bit better cropping. Kind of brings a little bit more of an emotional impact when we zoom in on somebody's face as well. So it's kind of great that we're doing that. And so one thing is missing, and that is the headline. So we're going to go ahead and bring that in, and I'll be right back. So here is our headline right here, finding the right accessories. We need to find a way, not only placement for this headline, but also how do we break up the different words so that it reads a little bit better, because that's not a very exciting headline. Even if we made it a little bit bigger, it's all the same typeface, and it doesn't really pop out among everything. So we have a little white space here. We could highlight our text and change the color from white. Let's go highlight the text, and let's change the fill to, we could change it to any of these colors we have, or go over here to our color picker. Let's get a CMYK and just pick kind of a generic color. We can have it there, but what we have when we have a subheading and a heading and we have all of our information on the right, it doesn't bring a lot of focus to the left. It'd be nice to have the headline and the girl together so we can really unify the focal point photo and the headline. So let's see if we can't find a way to put the headline on the left side so the viewer kind of reads the headline and then they shift over their eyes to the right side. So it really feels more of like a cohesive spread. So I think white's probably going to show up best. So we could just go to white. And let's break this up quite a bit. So what we can do here is we can create separate text boxes so we have maximum control over the headline. So we could do finding the, and how about let's make right its own text box. So I'm just copying and pasting in its own text box. And let's do accessories in its own text box. And so now we don't need this word anymore. So now we have 3 different elements we could start to stack. And we could just double click our bottom right corner to kind of bring our text box back into the right size so those don't accidentally get selected. So finding the right accessory. So what's the most important part of this headline? Finding the is not quite as important, so we can make that a little bit smaller. Right would be pretty important. Make that bigger, and of course we have to change our text box. Double click it to make it match. And then accessories can be a little bit bigger, so let's make that bigger. Let's say I want to make it the same size as right. Instead of having to double click here and go, okay, it's 81 point font, and then go over here and copy and paste 81 point whatever, there's an easier way to adapt, and that is just to do the eyedropper tool. I'm going to go ahead and highlight accessories, take the eyedropper tool, and go ahead and select right, and it's going to automatically adapt it to that size. Of course, we have to kind of make our text containment box a little bit bigger. And the same thing goes for photos. Remember when we selected the photo just once and we had the blue box and we were able to hold Command Shift and then we can scale it bigger? Same goes for text boxes. So let's say I don't want to have to keep making that bigger and then making the box bigger to keep up with it. I just want to make it bigger overall. You can do Command Shift and scale it that way too, so you don't have to sit there and keep readjusting that box. We can do Command Shift and scale it down or scale it up. So it just kind of saves you a little time not having to change that little text box all the time. So let's try to find some font pairing here. So I kind of like this typeface. This is Dido, which is a premium font, but it's a really nice serif typeface used for high-end luxury magazines. And so I think that's why I'm really liking the way the italicized wording works here. What could pair really good with that? Let's try a script typeface. So we can just go through our typefaces and try to find a script. So let's go down to script and see what we have. Let's try Pacifico. And sometimes you have to make the box a little bit bigger when you change your typeface. Well, that looks a little childish. We have a very high-end, elegant spread. Let's change that so it's not quite so childish. Let's try Al Fresco. So that has a little bit skinnier and has higher contrast between the lines. So we have some thin stroke here with a thick stroke. It just has a very elegant profile. So let's stick with Al Fresco, and I'm going to just do Command Shift and make that bigger and make that be kind of the focal point of the headline. And let's do the same thing. Let's also make this Al Fresco. And so what I'm going to do is I find tucking words into this little kind of natural space that's created under the H and the T. I'm just going to use that natural space that's created to tuck that in. I might need to bring this down. So now I'm having an issue with layering. Every time I click on finding the, right gets automatically selected because script typefaces tend to take up big boxes, selecting boxes. So what we can do is we can go to our layers panel, right here in our layers panel, and let's put finding the, let's just drag it on the top. So now when I click on top, I can be able to select it. It doesn't automatically select right because I moved it at the top of the layering system. So now we have a problem with contrast and not having too much going on in the photo and not enough readability of the type. So I selected all 3, right click. We can group these just like other Adobe programs, and now it's one group. So you see how it had one big bounding box now for all 3, and I can now move these around as one unit. And I can also do Command Shift and scale it down. If I just scaled it and I didn't hold down Command and Shift, it will change the box, the bounding box. But if I do Command Shift, it'll scale the size. So now we're just trying to find that right placement. We can zoom out, get an idea of placement. And it makes me wonder if I can almost have it bleed over to the other side. That would mean that we need to change the position of our photo quite a bit. So I'm just going to change the position of our photo. We can zoom in so we have more of a background to move over. Want to make sure the focus is on the accessories. And I have an idea that I want to try out. So I'm going to take this photo and I'm going to bring it all the way across to right here. And I am going to create, I can do this in Photoshop. If I need to extend that background in Photoshop, I'd bring it in Photoshop and extend it and duplicate that background. But since it's a simple solid background, I am just taking the rectangle tool and I'm going to fill that in. I'm going to take the eyedropper tool. I just wanted to sample this background color. So I'm going to sample the background color and I just filled in a simple rectangle with that color using the eyedropper tool. And now I'm going to send this back in the layering system. So this is our rectangle. We can always toggle it on and off to know where we are in the layering system. And we can drag it all the way down to the bottom. So what we could do is we can reverse this out and make it a dark background presentation, which will add some richness to the article. I'm just making some minor corrections. So now we can have the headline kind of bleed over here. We can ungroup this if we needed to tweak this any. And this will give us an opportunity to maybe shorten this article. Of course, sometimes you cannot shorten articles. You're stuck with whatever the client gives you. And I still have snap to grid on so that everything is snapping automatically to the grid. We could turn that off at any time by going to View and turning off snapping to grid.